A man left his home in Chicago one cold November day to go to Cancun on vacation. His wife was supposed to meet him there a day later. When he arrived there, he sent an email to his wife, but only he mistyped the email address. His email went to a recent widow who just buried her husband. When she opened her emails, she gasped and fainted. Her daughter, who happened to be home at the time, heard her fall and went to see what happened. And she found this note on the computer screen. "My dearest, I just checked in. I can hardly wait to see you when you get here tomorrow. Your loving husband. Oh, P.S. It is sure hot down here." So, once in a while we find those. So it's a humorous way to introduce the homily because it makes us think, again, this is November, the month in our northern hemisphere, and the church's liturgical calendar seems to be based on that, where nature has gone to sleep for winter's rest. And so there's a death, as it were. Leaves have died. No longer, even the grass has stopped growing, I hope. And so the church thinks about death, end times, the four, what we call last things, okay? Death, judgment, heaven, hell. Purgatory is part of heaven, purification. And so we hear from the first reading from Maccabees, describes that, yes, it's very heroic and dramatic, but the incredible courage of a mother and 7 sons who would not abandon their ancestral faith when asked to eat pork. That represents the entire Mosaic law, not eating pork. That was part of the systematic campaign by the Greek king. When Alexander the Great died, he had 12 generals. He divided up his rather large kingdom for that time to his 12 generals. And so this is one of them. Anyway, to unite his kingdom, as often emperors will do, Constantine did that with the Catholic faith. He imposed, or wanted to impose, his pagan faith and religious symbols, worship, practices, etc., upon all the inhabitants within his realm, forcibly. And so that, of course, was, for many Jews, they apostatized, gave in, offered sacrifice to the gods, but not everybody. And so those we hear about are the Maccabean family, and they faced a gruesome death because of this unwavering faith that they had in the resurrection of the dead. Did you hear those things? You know, my tongue, my hands were given to me by heaven. I trust they'll be restored to me in the resurrection of the dead. So they really truly believe that they can face this horrible torture, unjust as it is, because they realize so much more lies beyond death. The Sadducees in the gospel did not believe in the resurrection of the body. Pharisees did, Sadducees did not. So they challenged Jesus by this absurd situation of a woman marrying the 7 brothers and leaving her childless. And so who's she married to? To whom is she married? And Jesus responds that they're thinking in earthly terms, that somehow the life after death is just a continuation of this life. He says, no, it's not that way. In the age to come, heaven, things will be very, very different. There will be no marriage in heaven. And so Jesus uses this example, to affirm that there's the truth of the resurrection of the body, in other words, reality of life after death. God is alive to everyone. He says that in the gospel. So you and I, as disciples of Jesus, believe that death is not the end of our personal existence. We have an immortal soul. It cannot die. It cannot die. We are destined to live for all eternity. The question is where? Heaven or hell? Not so funny, heaven or hell. Okay? And our bodies die, of course, but at the resurrection of the dead, they'll be reunited with our souls, because we are body, soul. We cannot be fully human without our unity of body and soul. And we believe that every person who has ever lived and died is still alive to God. God will not make us cease to exist. He will not do that in his love. We exist, we live for all eternity. That's something to think about. for all eternity. That's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary statement. Our bodies die, we do not die. Despite all outward appearances, there really and truly is no death. Yes, the body dies to be resurrected. And this has been affirmed. There's many, philosophically we can do it. Even some of our science is showing something interesting in that regard. But we believe and embrace the resurrection of Jesus. He truly, truly died, and 3 days later rose from the dead. Not a resuscitation, a whole new human existence. One does not just appear in a room. He didn't knock on the door. One does not eat food as Jesus did to show he's real. He says, look at my wounds. Touch my side. Put your hands in my wounds. Okay? So he's solid, and yet he's different. A transformed matter. Wow. Whatever that is, it's glorious. Okay? And that's to be our heritage, to be more faithful to Christ. So it is spiritually healthy to reflect on our eternal destiny from time to time. It really is, with some regularity. Not in a morbid way or a fearful way, but a way that helps us focus, what? The final goal of our life. What's our final goal? To die with a big retirement fund? We're not saying we don't need to be wise with our money for retirement, but that's not our goal. Our goal is to be with God and to serve Him now. Remember, we've mentioned it before, the wonderful Baltimore Catechism. Who made me? God made me. Why? To know, love, and serve Him in this life, and to be happy with Him forever in heaven. They're both equal. To love, know, and serve Him in this life. Heaven's a consequence. It'll just happen if we do know, love, and serve Him in this life. So, some of us are doing the Ignatian exercises over a 9-month period, and Ignatius has us, as we go through his exercises, with the help of Kathy and Al Arzabinsky from Pittsburgh, trained in doing this, that he talks about, we have to think about our sinfulness, God's love and mercy, and he does some meditations on hell. And it's good to think about, okay, hell is to be absent of love. So one example, you probably heard it before. So let's say we're like Dante. Our guardian angel says, Paul, I'm going to show you heaven and hell. Okay. Now, I'm not dead, we're just going to go. And so my angel shows me hell. And we walk in this wonderful, wonderful banquet room, beautifully decorated, excellent art, wonderful music, a banquet table set that's just wonderful foods of all kinds of varieties. And the people in there are cursing God, cursing each other, absolutely miserable, because you see their hand now, their arm has been extended to this way out here, and it's a fork or a spoon, and they can't feed themselves. All this luscious food, and they can't eat it. They're miserable. In other words, they're tearing it on themselves. They're narcissists. Can you imagine being in a room full of narcissists? We've all met narcissists. They're hard to put up with. And then, so now the angel says, okay, let's go up and look at heaven. It's the same thing. It's the same gorgeous room, beautiful art, decorated. Everyone is laughing and praising God and just delighting in the joy of living. And they go, wow, that's the difference. They have this extended arm with a spoon. They're feeding each other. Because you see, in hell, it's all about me, and I'm closed off, and I'm alone and frustrated in my selfishness forever. In heaven, we're sharing with each other and blessing God. It's a powerful image to think about. So with that backdrop, that can affect how we look at what we're going through now from the perspective of eternity. So, we face stresses, challenges, setbacks, disappointments, failures, sicknesses, losses, death of loved ones, our own death is pending, whatever. So we can look at that moment and say, oh, and just despair, or we can look like, wait a minute, there's a context here. The final goal is here, I'm here, okay? How do I live now with that in mind? Just like the Maccabean brothers, they could face that horrible situation because they knew what was coming on the other side, okay? I've mentioned before, one of my mother's famous expressions besides, there's nothing more useless than a burned out light bulb, was one of them. And the other one was, in the grand scheme of things, what's the big deal? So she had a sort of a perspective especially when they were younger years, of seeing it that way. Let's contextualize this. I think that's what we're talking about here. That's what I'm talking about. So in the midst of our struggles, whatever they may be, we just step back for a moment and again, look at this whole thing from the point of view of eternity, the point of view of God's faithfulness and love. I think it will change how we respond to the present situation. It did for the mother and the 7 sons and sons of Maccabees. Okay? So again, it's just, we'll end there. It's just a thought of, it's not morbid or fearful to ponder our one day, for us who are a little older along the way here, our death. Bishop Malesic at the funeral mass for Monsignor Mike Matusek, as he just said a few comments. Father Al Paczynski was the preacher, celebrant. I may have mentioned this, but he just pointed to the casket and said, one day we'll be there. We really will be. So now I have a funeral mass, I'm looking at the casket saying, Paul, one day you'll be there. Or an urn, but I'll be in a casket. That's not being more, it's just like, okay, this is real. And maybe it helps us make decisions for Jesus that we wouldn't wait. We don't want to put off decisions for him that we should do now, not later.